Good evening, good folks, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission General Session meeting for this Tuesday, January 9th. Before we get into tonight's business, I do want to let folks know that we do have public comment periods set for the beginning of our meeting on any agenda items, and we also have a public comment period at the end of the meeting on anything you wish to discuss. If you are giving public comment in person, we do ask that you complete the public comment form at the back of the room and provide that to our clerk at the end of the dais here. Please provide your name and home address. Note I will not be sharing your home address publicly, but for our internal records, we do ask that you provide your home address. I will call you up by name and then what neighborhood you might live in the city, or if you're in a neighboring city, township, or village, and you'll have 3 minutes to provide your remarks at that time. If you have anything to share, please avail yourself of public comment. No outbursts from the audience. Maintain decorum. Normally we do have public comment by phone as well, but there's a technical hiccup happening right now that's inhibiting us from allowing public comments by phone. So there will at least not be public comment by phone for agenda items. If we are able to resolve that issue, we will welcome public comment by phone at the end of the meeting on any items. Before we get into the business though, we are going to have a prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you wish to join us in either of those, then I ask you to stand if you're able to do so. Prayer is going to be led by Pastor Russell Dam from Oak Crest Church. Welcome, Pastor.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be back. You know, with everything that's going so crazy with the world right now, it is such a pleasure to know that there is still prayer going on, because we definitely need it. So thank you, and thank you all on the board for having us here. Father, we just thank you and we praise you. We give you glory and honor, and we know that in praise, you hear our prayers. So, Father, I just lift up the board to you right now. I lift up all the agenda, everything that's going to be going on today. I just lift it up to you, and we pray that you'll help people's minds and hearts be open to making decisions that fall in line with your word. We give you all the glory and the praise in that, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Cochin? Here. Vice Mayor St. Clair?
Here.
Mayor Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Kilgo?
Here.
Commissioner Keener?
Here.
Commissioner German?
Here.
Commissioner Corman?
Yes, here.
We are assembled and have quorum. So first up, under honors, awards, and presentations, we do have a special ceremony recognizing and celebrating our firefighters. As many folks know, we had the 150th anniversary last year, which included a number of festivities throughout the month of September. We did order some special commemorative badges last year. It took a while for them to arrive, and there's never too few opportunities, though, to celebrate and commend our firefighters for the important work that you do in service to our community and protection of lives and livelihoods in our city. And so we're happy to kick off this year with another opportunity to celebrate our firefighters on the 150th anniversary and for all the work that each of you do day in and day out for our community. So with that said, we're going to have Vice Mayor read off the names as we go. Our City Manager, Jonathan Seifert, and myself will be presenting the certificates and badges and giving special thanks to each of you.
Battalion Chief Dennis Barnum is not with us tonight. Firefighter Devin Brock. Firefighter Stephen Chartier. Firefighter Zachary Coltrane. Not here tonight? Okay. Firefighter Devin DeVries. Oh. All right. We just lost half of them.
Duty calls. Our
Yes.
firefighters respond promptly.
Yes. Battalion Chief James Diffel. Fire Lieutenant Jason Dion. Fire Lieutenant Daniel Duffy. Alright. Assistant Fire Mechanic Jacob Dyer. Fire Lieutenant Troy Edmondson, I believe, is not here tonight. Fire Lieutenant Jordan Grabinski. Yes. Firefighter Vincent Ginsler. Fire Marshal Steve Hammond. Fire Battalion Chief Michael Hewertson.
I'm shocked by that news.
Assistant Fire Mechanic Jason Rorschach. Director of Public Safety Timothy Kozel. Fire Battalion Chief Kenneth McMillan. Just left, all right. Not here tonight is firefighter Anthony Mojica. Firefighter Wesley Moss. Just left, all right. Also not here tonight is Fire Lieutenant Daniel Olenicek. Fire Lieutenant Samantha Pasteur. Deputy Director of Fire Service Jay Paulson. Fire Lieutenant Samuel Schmidt. Firefighter Sean Selmeyer. Just left. All right. Firefighter Logan Sweet. Firefighter Adam Tiefenbach. And not here tonight is firefighter Gavin Van Boxel. And finally, firefighter Kyle Visser. Also just left. So that does conclude our list. Thank you so much for your service and the support that you provide for your community. I think I can speak for the whole commission when I say that we want to support you so that you can continue to do the incredible work that you're doing. And at this time, those of you who are left, if you will come up so that you can have your picture taken, that would be wonderful. Stay for the rest of the meeting. Come on now.
We also have refreshments in the hallways if anyone wants to get some cake and refreshments in celebration of our firefighters. So don't forget the cake. The ranks.
Nice.
Thank you again, firefighters, and stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, next up, under honors, awards, and presentations, we have an audit presentation by Brickley DeLong, but we're being led out by our finance director, Ken Grant.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to thank everyone who helped with the audit. It put lots of people, staff in the audit, put a lot of time into this. It's an accumulation of a lot of work and time. So I'm going to bring Eric Van Dot from Brickley DeLong to give a summary of the audit that has been presented to the state and to you guys. Is on our website. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us or Eric if you have opportunities. Everybody should have a booklet. I passed out the booklets last night along with the letter. So at this time, I'll bring Eric up to talk about the audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. Welcome, Mr. Van Dot, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all as well. Every time I come to these meetings, there's always exciting things going on, so that's good. All right, you guys all should have your books handy. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the financial statements. I am here for your benefit, though, so if you have a question or want to jump in and ask something, please feel free to do so. But starting off in here, in the front on pages 5 to 10, just as an FYI, is a transmittal letter. That's just an overview of the city itself as written by Jonathan and Ken. If you get past that to page 17 to 19, that's our opinion letter. And this is what really makes this an audit. Otherwise, it's just a set of financial statements. We did our audit. We expressed an opinion on it. You can see the top two paragraphs there. The second paragraph says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the various financial statements for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That means exactly what it says based on the results of our audit, our tests, our inquiries, our procedures, our analyticals, and everything else that we do. We believe your financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. Following that, on page 21 to 32 is the management discussion and analysis, and that is another document that's written by Ken, and it's kind of a nice overview of the financial statements from the city's viewpoint. It's a required part of the financial statements. I kind of call it the cliff notes of the financial statements, although it provides actually some additional information. The financial statements will tell you what happened. The MD&A gets a little bit more into why things happen and what your future plans are. But just as an FYI, Transmittal and MD&A are both good documents to take a look at. But let's take a look at your numbers. If you want to flip to 39, we'll look at the general fund. The general fund is in the left column on 39. If you want it broken out in more detail, there is a ton more detail behind the footnotes and the budget to actual schedule, all broken out by department. But we'll just keep it the short version here. The top there, the first subtotal is total revenues of $39,157,873. That's up a little over $5 million. Just to talk about some of the areas that changed, obviously bringing in that additional revenue. The top line taxes is both property and income taxes, and that is up significantly. Income taxes were up almost $2 million, and then property taxes were up about $1 million. The property tax amount includes those marijuana distributions from the state. That's where they want it grouped, so those are included in there as well. Licenses and permits below that, a little over $3 million, are up about $768,000. You all know there's a lot of different developments and things happening right now, so there's a lot happening in that area. I'd also note the another big increase is the investment earnings and rental income there at $1,075,000, and that's up over $1 million as well, as a much better investment return in 2023 than 2022. So that all combined to, like I said, bring in some extra revenue for the city. On the expenditure side, total expenditures of $42,787,392. That's the next subtotal. That's up about $5 million as well. That's spread amongst the various categories there. A few things I would note: required pension payments were up a bit, and then under public safety, that encompasses your inspections department, and that of course is up quite a bit as well due to the additional licensing and permitting activity. Capital outlay there at the bottom of almost $5.2 million. A lot of that's your housing infill projects being funded with some of the ARPA money and other resources, along with a few other small projects. So that leaves you with expenditures exceeding revenues of $3,629,519. Then you've got your other financing sources. There's some debt issued there for the fire truck, transfers in, especially related to ARPA, and then transfers out to various funds, particularly this year the Arena Fund, the Marina Fund, and the Public Service Fund, although there were Public Service Building Fund, although there were a couple other small ones as well. The net result of all that is a decrease in fund balance of $843,465 and ending fund balance of $10,017,908. I would note, if you were to look at this and compare this to your internal general fund information, it's different because for the external reporting purposes, your budget stabilization fund is rolled into this as well, and that's about $1.8 million. So your internal general fund is going to be lower than by the budget stabilization fund because you track those two funds separately. I would also note that you have a policy that your unassigned fund balance in the general funds equal to 13% of prior year revenues. You're currently at 17.6%, so you're well above that. So you did spend a little bit more money than you took in, but I know that was intentional. All things said and done, we were able to generate some extra revenue and get a lot of things done. So good news in the general fund. Any questions here?
Commissioners, any questions at this time?
All right, let's briefly touch upon your proprietary funds. If you want to flip back to page 43, we'll talk briefly about your sewer and water funds. This is the operating statement or your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the sewer and water funds. The sewer funds in the left column there, if you just want to go near the bottom, you can see an increase in net position of $2,302,493. In the sewer fund, that is leaves you with an ending net position of $25,498,790. I would emphasize that unlike most of your other funds, which follow what we call modified accrual accounting, which is current resources, so it's really just cash in hand or things that will be cash in the near future or paid out in the near future. This encompasses everything. So this is going to have all of your fixed assets, your infrastructure, your pipe in the ground, any related debt. And that's why we use the term net position instead of fund balance, because it means something different. But what it also means is that when you see $25 million, that doesn't mean there's $25 million in the bank, because a lot of it is already in the ground, as it were. If you look at the bottom of page 42, which is the previous page, you'll see that net position on your statement of net position broken into three categories. Net investment and capital assets, and that is your basically all of your fixed assets net of any related debt. Restricted for debt service, some of the bonds have covenants requiring some money be set aside, and then unrestricted gives you a better idea of what's actually available or shortly available or spendable, as it were, if you want to think of it that way, and that's $3.8 million. So to compare that to the prior year, sewer fund in the prior year was about $1.9 million, so sewer fund actually went up a little bit this year just due to how the year went. Now, if we go back to page 43, we'll look at the water fund. In the next column, again, near the bottom, you see an increase in net position of $2,413,874, ending net position of $33,715,826. Again, we look to the bottom of the previous page, and we'll see the split there. Now, the water fund's kind of an interesting circumstance. Even though it looks like you've got a lot of net position, you had a positive increase in net position. When you look at the bottom of page 42, you see you actually have a negative balance in unrestricted. And the reason that's happening is, you can have an increase in net position, but a decrease in unrestricted is you've got so many of these capital grants coming in from the state right now. And those capital grants come in and are put in the ground, as it were. You're building infrastructure, so you're creating assets, you're creating net position, but you're creating net position that you can't really spend again. It's in the ground. So you can have $2 million increase in net position, but it's really all going in the net investment and capital assets line item. and as a result, unrestricted there, you've got a deficit position there. Last year's was about the same amount. I think it went up just a hair from the prior year. Along with that, you have a negative cash position in the water fund. So this is really a fund that you want to keep an eye on. Try to build it back up. Obviously, I think in the last 2 or 3 years, you guys have done a lot of water work there, so you've gotten a lot done. But again, building up that net position, but it's all pipe in the ground and not cash in the bank, as it were. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions on the sewer or water funds?
Commissioners?
All right. I always briefly touch as well on your MERS and OPEB funding, so why don't we look at that? If you want to go back to page 95, which is back behind the footnotes, there's a nice big table. This is your statement of changes in net pension liability and related ratios. As you likely know, the city had a defined benefit plan for its employees. That defined benefit plan has been closed for 15 plus years or so. However, you still have a lot of retirees on the plan, and you also have some active employees that have been around for a while that are still on it as well. So when you're looking at page 95, the first thing I would note is you're in MERS, which is a state system, and the information provided by MERS is on a calendar year, and we have to use that information because that's what's provided. So what you're looking at here is actually as of 12/31/22, so it's 6 months older than your actual financial statements. So this information is just a little older, just as an FYI. But the total pension liability is the top. That's basically what the liability calculates as ignoring any assets that are set aside. It's been creeping up a little bit, but not as fast as it was quite a few years back. You still have employees that are earning benefits, so that's why that number's still going up. So it's up a little bit there to 132 million. And then the plan fiduciary net position below that is the assets that are set aside in trust at MERS. And that decreased about $16 million to 83 million this year. And the main reason for that, which you should notice right away there, is that really big net investment loss. I don't think it's any big secret that 2022 is a really bad year on the stock market and everywhere else. So you took a big hit there, and that caused the decrease. I think you should hopefully, I haven't seen it yet, but they'll be coming out soon, but be pleasantly surprised when the 2023 data comes out, because obviously 2023 was a much better year. So hopefully when we're talking next year, we'll be talking about a big increase in the fiduciary net position. But the net result of that is a net pension liability. The net liability there, $48 million. You continue to be about 63% funded. The state likes to see everybody at least 60% funded. You're still over the state's threshold. And again, hopefully next year, we're going to be talking about that being bumped back up as well. Any questions on this? This table is gradually building out to 10 years since that new standard was implemented. I think we're in year 9 here, but the nice of that is you can look back and kind of see the history of how this is done over time. All right, otherwise we'll flip back to page 97, and we will look at the same thing for your retiree health care, or I call it OPEB for other post-employment benefits. Same situation, you provide retiree health care. The plan's been closed, but it still exists for the retirees and the employees that were in it before it was closed. Again, this is as of the 12/31, so we're looking back 6 months farther than the rest of the financial statements. And this plan is we're not as big as the pension. We're about a quarter of the size there. But on the top, you can see the total liability increased $983,000 to $28.9 million. The assets, again, you had a net investment loss there due to the way things went in 2022, but so your fiduciary net position decreased about $2.5 million to just $23,052,000, and this is about 80% funded. And the state likes to see this one at least 40% funded. You guys have always been significantly over that. The city's been funding its retiree health care quite a bit longer than most entities have. I think you've been funding it since about 30 plus years. Most entities have only been funding it in the last 10 to 12 years. So that's why you're a lot better funded than maybe some of the other communities or areas that you read about here. So again, the main story is investment return wasn't too great, but unfortunately that's the one thing you don't really have any control over. You just kind of ride it along. Get 2 or 3 good years, you got to take a bad year once in a while. So.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions on the book? I do have a couple other things to talk about outside of the financial statements. Otherwise, I will mention in the back that there is a single audit in the back. It's a federal compliance audit. When you spend in excess of $750,000 in federal funds, you're required to have a single audit or compliance audit. They call it a single audit. Little useless trivia here. Years ago, they used to have a separate audit for each type of federal grant. That got really cumbersome, so 30 plus years ago or whatever, they kind of boiled it all down into one process into a single audit, and that's why we call them single audits, which admittedly is kind of weird if you don't know the reason why. But we did that. You had 3 major programs that we took a look at this year, ARPA and the lead paint and CDBG. We did not have anything that we felt rose to the level of findings. There are no compliance or control findings related to the single audit or the audit as a whole. So, but that report's in the back, and that's been filed with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse as well, so you're all set there. Also, just as an FYI, I don't know if that was tucked in with the books or not, but there's a little letter that comes along with the audit as well. I go through this with you every year, but basically it's just we're required to put certain things in writing. This is called our auditor's letter to those charged with governance, and it just goes through those very specific things. There was one new accounting standard that took effect this year on subscription-based IT arrangements that the city follows, although you didn't have anything that actually met the criteria of GASB 96. It goes through significant estimates, the fact that we look at them and believe they're reasonable. It gets into just as an FYI, I use significant footnotes, and I went through those 2 nice tables on MERS and OPEB, but footnotes M and N get in a great deal more detail on the weeds if you want to go into how some of those assumptions are arrived at and a lot more information. You're more than welcome to look at that, but we generally like to point those out just because those are bigger numbers. If there are difficulties encountered in performing the audit, we would note that. There were not any. If there were disagreements with management on accounting or auditing principles, we would note that. Again, there weren't any, and just a few other little odds and ends in here. But for the most part, I would say this is a pretty generic or vanilla letter. There's really not a lot in here that's unusual or different. However, you get a letter, I just want to make sure you know what it is and why you have it. Frankly, of all the stuff we provide you, this is probably one of the lesser important things. Obviously, the financial statements are the big one, but just had to provide that as well. So I'm at the end, but final chance for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Van Dop. Commissioner Cochin.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you very much for compiling all of this information for us, because it is important to be able to see a snapshot of where we are at as a city. I just wanted to make sure that I'm clarifying something on page 42. You were talking about the water fund.
Yep.
And you said that the 2,078,558
Yep.
was not actually in debt. Is that correct?
With the 2,078,000?
Yes. Sorry.
It's not debt. It's basically your liabilities exceed your assets is what we're saying there. If you look at the page 41 and 42 are the statement of net position, which is like a balance sheet, which is a snapshot in time. This is where you stand on June 30. We were looking at page 43. That was how you did for the year. So, for instance, if you look at page 41, which is the asset side, you'll see there's no cash in the water fund, and actually there's negative cash. If you look at 42 in the liability side, you'll see there's a due to other funds of about $2.4 million. The city has one big bank account that all the funds have a piece of. So when you write checks out of whether it's the arena fund or the major streets or local streets or marina fund or water or whatever, it comes out of that. So it's a big pool, and the water fund actually has a negative position in that pool. So on your books, you'd see a negative $2.4 million in cash in the water fund. So I suppose in a way the water fund has borrowed that money from the other funds. We can't show negative cash on the audit, so we show it as due from other funds. But it's not the exact amount. You've got the negative unrestricted amount because there's receivables and payables and things other than cash in there, but that's pretty close to the amount. And again, that's just reflective of the fact that you've been doing a lot of work the last few years and have had to use some cash. A lot of it's coming from state loans and grants, but some of it comes from the city as well.
Yes, we have. And we've got more to do, don't we?
Yeah, well, it's a big city and a growing city, so yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any follow? Commissioner Cochin? No. Commissioner Kilgo.
This question might be for the city manager. Is this where we may have to submit a plan for the state?
So we did figure out through this process, after all the numbers came in, that we're just above that threshold for submitting a plan to the state. That's good. However, as the numbers show, we still have a significant amount in that fund that's due to the general fund. So the data that Director Vanderhyde and Director Grant went over at our legislative policy meeting in the November is still all the same. It's just where that final number ended up falling was a little bit above where we would be required to do a deficit elimination plan to the state.
State has 2 or 3 different triggers for a deficit elimination plan. Usually having a negative unrestricted would trigger it, but your current assets exceed your current liabilities, so at this point in time they didn't require a deficit elimination plan. But as you indicated, it's certainly important and needs to be addressed. You certainly don't want to have this fund keep going the way it's going. So,
Absolutely. Any follow-up, Commissioner Kogo?
No.
Any other questions at this time, commissioners? Or otherwise, thoughts to share? All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Van Dopp, and thank you to our finance department and all of our division department heads for help complete this process. It's a considerable undertaking every year, but
Yes.
an important and necessary undertaking to get done.
you're stealing my thunder. I was going to thank them too. Ken, Jessica, Sarah, and many others in finance and treasurer's office, and frankly throughout the city. We have to deal with a lot of different departments, and we appreciate the time and effort that goes in the audit. The audit's only as successful as the time and effort the city puts into it, so we appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you for having us out here, and look forward to seeing you again next year. So thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our consent agenda. Oh, actually, public comment on agenda items. I don't have any forms, so I almost skipped it over. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give public comment on an agenda item? And I think our phones still aren't working, so we cannot accept public comment by phone at this time, unfortunately. So, commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the consent agenda. Are there any items that you wish to have removed for separate consideration, deliberation, and vote? Commissioner Kogo.
Items D, F, G, and H.
Could you repeat D,
D is in dog, yep. F is in Frank,
F? Okay.
G is in George, H is in Henry.
And H. All right. So we got D, F, G, and H. Are there any other items? Commissioner or Vice Mayor St. Clair?
Item J.
All right. Any other items, commissioners? Is this going on consent?
We can put it under new business. Yeah.
Seeing no others, then I would welcome a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented, minus items D, F, G, H, and J.
Go move.
Support.
A motion by Commissioner German, supported by Vice Mayor St. Clair. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Point of information, is item E removed? I mean, it's still on our papers, but is it removed?
It's removed per staff request.
Thank you.
But it's not presently. Thank you for acknowledging that. So folks at home that might have seen a prior version of the agenda. Item E, sale of 720 Leonard Avenue has been removed per staff request. It will be returning to the commission at a future date.
Ms. City Clerk, yes.
Commissioner Keener,
Yes.
Commissioner German.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item D, rezoning of 1993 Austin Street. Commissioner Kogo.
So I have, I'm sorry, the motion is, request to rezone the property at 1993 Austin Street from B4 general business to R2 single family medium density residential, by Derek Masterman.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kogo, supported by Vice Mayor St. Clair. And we have our Planning and Zoning Administrator, Mike Franzik, here to report out on this item.
Good evening. So this private residence reached out to us for the rezoning. It is considered a legally non-conforming structure in use right now because it is a residential home. It's been zoned that way for quite some time, probably since the 90s. It looked like, since it was so close to the Keating and Laketon business corridor, that was really kind of a viable area for business expansion back then. But we see commercial corridor shrinking now, and it's probably not so viable anymore. There's not been any commercial requests in that area since I've been aware. So I think the right thing to do would be to rezone this to single-family residential, going with R2, which would fit the rest of the block. This would actually allow the lot to be split 3 times. So there'd be 2 additional lots for single-family homes to be built.
Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Commissioner Kogo.
Just a couple questions, Mr. Franzik. So it's true, all those side streets, I actually used to own property right off of this street. Most of the side streets there are not paved; they're dirt roads right there. And it's a pretty large section that's currently zoned B4. So every resident, if they wanted to, because it is hard to sell your property if it's not zoned right. So every other resident there would have to appeal to the commission to get their zoning changed. So we're just changing this one parcel right now.
Just as one parcel right now, but I did want to note that it's in here that this also does meet the recommendation of the master plan that we just adopted for the future land use map to turn this back eventually into residential where it makes sense. So I think this is a great first step to get us looking in the area, and staff wants to go a little bit further. We did identify a couple other properties that are on this corridor that are zoned B4 that probably should stay. There's a couple that really look like commercial buildings that have some businesses that go in and out of them. But I would suggest maybe 2 or 3 other properties I do intend on reaching out to and see if that's something that they would like to have us do as staff, is recommend completing this rezoning. We didn't have time, this applicant didn't have time to go through that process and getting a hold of everybody because they actually want to sell their property and they're trying to get comparables on that. And it's hard to do with the business zoning. So if this is successful, that staff would like to take that initiative and rezone the rest of this block and this business.
Okay, follow-up question would be, so residents around this resident did not receive notice? Or they did?
They received notice that this particular property wants to do so. I would venture to guess that most people probably don't even know that their property's improperly zoned.
I'd agree, yeah. Okay. No further questions from me.
Thank you, Commissioner Kogo. Vice Mayor St. Clair, did you have any? All right. Commissioner Cochin.
I did have a question. The person that reached out to the city in regards to getting the zoning changed, are they aware that the lot could be split up into 3 separate lots?
Yes, I actually brought that up with them. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions, commissioners? All right. And this had also gone to the planning commission and was
Unanimously recommended for approval.
For adoption. Okay. All right. If there's no other discussion or questions, then I say roll call, please.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Yes.
Commissioner Keener.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, F, sale of 159 McLaughlin Avenue. Commissioner Kilgo.
Staff is requesting approval of a purchase agreement for 159 McLaughlin Avenue for 179. I'm sorry. Approve the purchase agreement for 159 McLaughlin.
That's a motion.
Yes.
Support. We got a motion by Commissioner Kogo, supported by Commissioner German to approve the purchase agreement for 159 McLaughlin Avenue. And who's reporting out on this item?
I support.
We got support from
Oh,
Commissioner
sorry.
German. Who's reporting out on this item?
It
It
says.
says planning. Is
It
Mr.
says
Franzik going to
Mike.
come back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We got our Deputy City Manager, Lynn Mikesell, going to report out on this item.
Hello. So this is one of the homes that was built by Dave Duzendang through our agreement with him using our ARP funds to build infill housing. This one, I believe, sorry, it's been a little bit since I looked at this. This is one of the newer designs with a smaller floor plan.
Questions, Commissioner Kogo?
Yes, so I pulled this item just to get to ask some questions because I actually haven't seen this property myself either. Do we know how many more they're planning to build?
That might be a Jake question.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I can address that
Introduce
question.
yourself just for anyone
Oh,
watching at
yeah,
home.
Jake Eckholm, Director of Development Services with the City of Muskegon. To address your question, Commissioner Kilgo, so as a point of clarity, you mean infill homes built through our ARP program or
Correct.
infill homes built by West Urban specifically?
Do the program in general.
Okay, so the two ARP-funded builders are LRS Enterprises, which is Reuben Briggs and his brother Greg Briggs. They're doing a smaller format project on Leonard. All of those are standing. So, I believe there's another sale that will be coming before the commission soon. Those are all standing and either under finished carpentry or close to done. West Urban has 14 standing right now, including the one that's on your agenda this evening. Another one available and listed. This particular model is a bi-level that we help design with West Urban to offer more affordable floor plans and then something that can be scaled later. So this one specifically will have several more of this model, I think 6 more. All 14 remaining homes, including this one, either have foundations. There's 6 with foundations, and then there are 6 that are at drywall stage, like under construction, and then the 2 that are this one and the other one that's available and listed. The other one that's available and listed is our newest floor plan with West Urban. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom ranch, and it's a smaller, compact unit that we're able to sell around 135. So.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Vice Mayor St. Clair.
I have a question for you. There are 2 houses right next door to each other on this. Is one of those one of the single floor ranches that you're speaking of?
Yep. Yeah, this is 159 McLaughlin, and then the addressing is a little wonky because it's sitting on a
It's a
corner.
weird
So
intersection.
the other one I think is 307 McLaughlin, and it's right next door. That one is the small format ranch, and it has a garage on it. The remainder will not have a garage. And so the reason we did that is we effectively, I went to the builder and said, build me something at 170 that I can sell at 150, and build me something at 150 that I can sell at 130. And the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom came back at roughly 161. That was with the garage. And I was like, all right, let's lop off the garage, and then maybe we can get closer to our build price. So we've been over the brownfield TIF. I won't spend a ton of time on that, but effectively trying to make sure that our amount of TIF reimbursement is manageable on all those and still keeping them low-priced new construction homes.
My work site is right across the street from where these went up, so I've had the pleasure of watching them go up. And when they poured the foundation, I was like, there's no way that that's going to be a house. It's so small, and it just looks like a house. It doesn't look like it's a tiny little footprint. It doesn't look like a tiny house. It just looks like a house, and it's been really cool watching them. I was over there today and was glad to see the sold sign, and I think it's a really creative venture. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage people to drive by them because they don't look any different than any other house in that neighborhood.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was actually, it's funny you bring it up that way, Vice Mayor. They, really to get the idea through the builders, what we wanted, we drove around the community and said, a lot of these homes already exist, and we recently changed the zoning so that you can build those again. And so this is what we want. Like, and kind of pointed out houses in the neighborhood, like, build me this little house. And honestly, I agree. I think it looks very fitting in the neighborhood. We have 3 of them right in a row on Sophia as well that are almost done. So yeah, it's worked out really well. I anticipate in our next phases we propose for infill housing, a lot of them will be these very attainable new construction units.
Commissioner Cochin?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, you were talking about the garage, and I know that a lot of people, when they move into a house, you know, they start to grow their family, they're going to need more space. Is there going to be an issue for them to be able to build a garage in the future? And if so, do you think that that's something that the city infill program would be able to assist with, or no?
That's a great question, Commissioner Cochin. So, where possible, if the lot width allows, or if it's a rear-loaded lot, like an alley-loaded lot, we always leave the availability, and the houses are designed where a garage could either be added on or an unattached garage could meet setbacks in the back. There are some unique experiences like that 159 this evening does have a garage, but it's on a corner lot, so it's a very shallow lot. The garage could have only gone in one spot. So had we built the house any different on the lot, we wouldn't have been able to put that garage on. So we try to be cognizant of that in our site designs to know that people could add a garage or an addition. And I should put, as a point of edification, if we don't include a garage on a home, we always put a shed on the property just to make sure people have storage space, so we don't have open storage issues for bikes and lawnmowers and things like that.
Wonderful, thank you.
Commissioners, any questions or comments on this end?
It's a beautiful project. I grew up, I spent a lot of time over in that neighborhood with my mother, and to see what the city is doing with that neighborhood it's just magnificent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Keener. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll go to roll call, please.
Commissioner Keener,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, G, DDA liquor license for Muskegon Brewing Company at 1204 West Western Avenue. Commissioner Kilgo.
Motion to approve the request for a Downtown Development Authority on-premise liquor license for Muskegon Brewing Company at 1204 West Western Avenue.
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kilgo, supported by Commissioner Gorman. All right. To approve the request for a Downtown Development Authority on-premise liquor license for Muskegon Brewing Company at 1204 West Western Avenue. Welcome back, Mr. Franzik.
Hello. So I'm filling in for Contessa Alexander on this one, who's on maternity leave right now. I used to be doing those, but she'll be taking over again. So Jocelyn Hines has also worked with me on this as well. We have Michael Brower here representing the company. For anyone who's not too familiar with these, there's a state statute that allows for liquor licenses to be granted within DDAs as long as the DDA passes a resolution to do so. We did so in the city of Muskegon probably over 10 years ago, and we've had a handful of these we've doled out, probably 7 or 8 in our downtown. They're a little unique in whereas they're not like a normal liquor license where they stay with the owner. If they were to leave and take that license with them, these licenses have to stay with the property. So they are more affordable though. The business has to show that they were unable to obtain a liquor license, and then they request 3 things from us: a resolution approving this tonight, a map, which we've included here tonight, and verification from the assessor's office that they meet the minimum investment criteria. Over the past 5 years, they have to invest, I believe, $75 million. Everybody, including public, whether that's a road or private business development, and we've always exceeded that with all the development we have going on. So they are providing that statement for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Commissioner Kilgo.
There are some other stipulations on the license too, like how many days they have to be open, and
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about some of the other stipulations for the DDA liquor license?
Yeah, they have to be, I may have forgotten these, so Mr. Barr might be able to remind me, but I believe they have to be open at least 5 days a week for at least 10 hours a day, and they have to have a minimum seating capacity. But we did verify that they meet all those, but escapes me right now exactly what those criteria are, but you are correct. They do have to meet those minimum hours of operation and seating.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kilgo. Commissioner Gorman, as a supporter of this motion, do you have anything to ask or add at this time?
No questions, just excited for the addition to our city, and I want to thank Mr. Brower for joining us tonight. That's all.
Any other questions for Mr. Franzik at this time?
Question, Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Franzik, for the report. Now, this is on the west end of Webster, right?
This is actually at Adelaide Point.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's on the new development. There's a new building being constructed right now. You can't really see it because of the boat storage building from the street, but if you were to be on the water, you could actually see it. It's going to be right on the water, and that's going to be the restaurant building.
Okay, so a restaurant. Okay,
Yes.
okay. And is the developer here?
The developer's not here, but their legal counsel, Mr. Brower, is representing. He is here. If you have any questions for them.
Okay. Well, no, not at the time, but thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner German.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments at this time?
Yeah, I do have one follow-up
Yes,
question.
Commissioner Kilgo.
Is this going to be a full-service bar restaurant? As far as like the liquor license, it's not like a microbrewer, just wine and beer.
It is not a
It's-
microbrewer.
It's
No,
a full bar.
it's a full bar.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Brower, since you're in the audience and here with us, and you're connected to this item, is there anything that you wish to add for the commission's consideration, or perhaps just celebrate the business itself? You're welcome to come up to the podium, introduce yourself, and share whatever you'd like.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael Brower. I think more than anything, I'm excited to see the development. Obviously, multiple locations in the city right now, but this one in particular being close to downtown in an area of Western Avenue that's been underutilized or maybe poorly utilized for a very long time. So I'm excited to see this new restaurant going in with wonderful lakefront views. It will be a full-service restaurant with what they're calling casual upscale fare. So, good pub food, good waterfront pub food. As well as the addition of jobs downtown. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Excellent. So in addition to a full-service bar, there will be Pigeon Hill, specialty craft.
So I have been told.
Or that's still in the works.
That is correct. The owners of Muskegon Brewing Company and the owners of Pigeon Hill Brewing Company, who include myself, have been brainstorming ways to make sure that the taps that are flowing at Muskegon Brewing Company are serving beer made or brewed here in Muskegon.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Brower at this time? Or anything else you wish to share?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brower. All right. Unless there's anything else, then we'll go to roll call, please.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Yes.
Commissioner Keener,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item H, amendment to zoning ordinance for residential units in previously existing commercial buildings. Commissioner Kilgo.
Motion to approve the request to amend section 401 of the zoning ordinance to allow multifamily residential units in previously existing commercial buildings not already converted to the residential and single-family residential districts as a special use permitted. Staff indicate, sorry.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Kilgo, supported by Vice Mayor St. Clair. Mr. Franzik, could you please report out on this item?
Yes, so there are quite a few small mixed-use buildings that you see right in the heart of neighborhoods through many of our downtown neighborhoods. And pretty much since the 1986 zoning map, these have all been zoned residential. Now there's a clause that says if it's a previously existing commercial building that hasn't been converted to residential, you can apply for a special use permit to do a small list of non-intrusive businesses like a restaurant or something that's really going to service a neighborhood and not be too intrusive. Part of our goals in the master plan is to bring back those neighborhood commercial uses, but it's very tough these days to sustain a business like that. So seen a lot of successful ones like Fatty Lumpkins or certain businesses that have establish themselves in the middle of neighborhoods and work out very well, but we have a lot of surplus of buildings. And there's also a clause in the zoning ordinance that says other similar uses. So over the past few years, we've taken a look at some of these as the Planning Commission, especially on Beidler Street, where there may have been 2 units above 2 commercial units, but those have been long vacant for years. So the Planning Commission decided it was within their purview to approve these for a couple extra residential units rather try to fill them with commercial, to go with the maybe 2 units above. what we'd like to do is just make this official and bring it in front of you also. We have the blessing to continue doing this. We have a major housing shortage. A lot of these buildings are just falling apart. We saw it again with the one on Washington, the historic building that we were luckily able to save, doing it that way. So this would be a great policy for this. Ultimately, I would like to see a lot of these buildings zoned our form-based code designation. I think that's the best fit for them. I know that can be a scary word for some in getting some of these rezoned. So in the meantime, I would encourage this policy to be enacted for whatever continues to be R1. But ultimately, as we rezone areas for form-based code, having that would really give the flexibility for developers to come in and know that's a use by right, that they can do commercial businesses or residential and flip-flop back and forth for whatever the market demands without having to come back and amend their special use permit all the time. That gets kind of a burden, gives them cold feet to invest. So right now I think this is a pretty good stopgap measure, but ultimately I think the form-based code serves these business buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Before I go to you, Commissioner Kogo, Mr. Manager.
Thanks, Director Franzik. We've got a couple new commissioners. Can you explain the special use permit process so they can understand that?
So, certain uses within a zoning district, you have your uses by right. That means you can go ahead and do that use without any special approvals as long as you have your building permits. A special use permit goes a little bit further. It requires a public hearing, which means we schedule out a public hearing where the public can come and speak on the topic. We notice everybody within 300 feet and put a notice in the paper as well. So it's a little more well known what's going on and people have the ability to comment. So when we've done these for extra residential units, it's going out to everyone within 300 feet. So usually that's never really had anybody speaking out about it because really they're only adding a couple of residential units to this one singular property. So it's really never been much of an issue, and it's worked out very well on Beidler Street. The old VCR repair shop one that's on the east side of the street has been redone into 4 units and is occupied. And the one that have the bowling, the duck pin bowling, I believe, on the west side, that's that one has building permits pulled right now, and they put in their parking lot. So we're looking at 4 units there, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Franzik. Commissioner Kogo.
So just for clarification, this change would say, to keep it in simple terms so I can understand, maybe it's just me, there's a multi-use building that has commercial on the bottom, and it used to have residential on the top. Somebody wants to turn it all into residential. By changing this tonight, they would still have to pull a special use permit, or this is saying they would no longer have to do that special use permit?
Still have to do the special use permit, but now it says residential is a use that you can apply for. The Planning Commission was interpreting it as such, but it's not as clear that you can go ahead and apply for that for residential. So it's just making it a little bit more clear that we want to encourage and allow people to apply not just for, a bread store or a hardwood store, something like that that serves the neighborhood. They could also say, hey, as long as there's enough parking and it meets all the other requirements, how about a residential unit in there?
Gotcha. So tonight's vote is not blanketing anything. If Joe wanted to buy X property and change it, he still would have to apply for a special use
Correct.
permit.
We still got to go to the Planning Commission. One of the issues going on right now that kind of brought this to the forefront is the Freddie Townsend Center in Jackson Hill. We've been trying to get that, that's a historic building. It's always been our goal to save that building and keep that in the neighborhood. It's zoned R1, so you can't do multiple units of residential in there, unfortunately. You would be able to with the form-based code, but as the R1, it's very limited. What they could do is apply for a special use permit to turn that into a business or several different business suites. I believe it's actually broken down into 4 suites right now, but it's very limited what you could do. And if you wanted to change one of those uses, you'd need to get that special use permit. This would also open it up to make those suites residential now, because we've had such a hard time filling that with commercial. like residential is probably the best option to save that building.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgo. Commissioner St. or Vice Mayor St. Clair, anything? Commissioner Cochin.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that my understanding of this is correct, especially for the people watching at home, because this is a little bit of a chewy subject for people who aren't in government. So the special use permit would make it so that they have to come before the commission, and then everybody within a 300-foot radius, you said, would be notified. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And they still have to meet all the requirements for a residential unit, which means they have to have enough parking. But I believe there's some outs in here where they can get a shared parking agreement. Oftentimes there's a large parking lot with a church or something nearby in these neighborhoods. So we don't want to encourage more pavement if you don't have to, but we also want to be cognizant that cars need to be placed in certain places. Well-written ordinance to accomplish that.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Cochin?
No, thank you.
Any questions or comments on this end?
I do just want to comment for public being part of the planning and zoning. That does not mean that you don't have a voice. You are always welcome to come to planning and zoning when they send out for public notice, as we've had this a number of times with a number of different buildings where it didn't fit the neighborhood. The neighborhood didn't quite see it there. And so we are conscious of that. We're conscious of the driveways. We're conscious of the plowing. We're conscious of how it will affect that community as a whole. So just so public knows that a person just can't come pull a permit and it's go.
Thank you, Commissioner Keener. That's an important distinction. As Ms. Francis was indicating earlier, the difference between use by right and special land use permit. That what we're doing here is expanding opportunities for people to how they use their property, with this additional special use being by that application to the Planning Commission and having a public hearing, and like Commissioner Keener just mentioned, all the neighbors and anyone else can come in and say their piece about whether or not that permit is issued or not.
I would also like to mention that one of the clauses in here is that you could not have more than 6 residential units. If a building is that big that can fit that, we think it's appropriate to rezone that to a business type use or a form-based code designation. Allow it just as a commercial use by right.
No? Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this time? Commissioner German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Director Francis, are these buildings owned by the city or are they privately owned?
There's a lot of privately owned ones. The city doesn't own any, to my knowledge. So the ones that are existing out there and are mostly vacant, they're privately owned.
And approving this, it will, again, be zoned as what? R what?
So it's not a rezoning. Most of them are zoned and are single-family residential districts, so R1, 2, or 3. And this is just a clause pretty much stating that we know that these buildings were built not as single-family residences. We want to keep them, and we have to provide more options for them because they're really big for just a one-unit home.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Keener?
Mike, for the public, could you answer, is it, do we try to encourage that buyers keep the aesthetics of the neighborhood when they purchase the building so that it doesn't look so out of place?
Yes, some of them are in historic districts, not many, but they'd have to abide by that. But the good thing is, a lot of these are just really cool old buildings, and if they don't even have a historic designation, it's pretty simple to rip off some bad siding that was put over and some boarded up windows, and that character really comes back. We'd like to encourage it, but it's pretty evident once they start fixing up these buildings, really get reinvigorated.
Any follow-up, Commissioner Keener?
No.
Thank you. If there's no other questions or comments at this time, then we shall go to roll call, please.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Yes.
Commissioner Keener,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item and final item from the consent agenda is item J, filtration plant tower lease changes. Vice Mayor St. Clair.
I move to approve the presented lease with Muskegon Cellular Partnership by Celco Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Keener. Welcome, DPW Director Dan Vanderhyde.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. So you may recall, some of you will recall, that in September, we were here asking for essentially the same thing. Since that time, Verizon has put some more thought and resources into putting this project up. This is for the cellular communications tower at the water filtration plant. A cellular antenna. The tower already exists. We, the city, own that tower. Verizon, as I said, has made some progress, applied for some permits, and in doing so, they came to us and said, we believe that the number of users that will benefit from this antenna is less than we anticipated, and therefore they wanted to renegotiate the terms from that September lease. Unfortunate, our consultant, Marilat Communications, worked with them and has worked with them quickly to try to keep Verizon interested, and so these terms are what they were able to secure from Verizon. The changes compared to what you saw in September and the highlights of the lease are the monthly rent of $2,750. That is less than the $3,500 that we had proposed in September. In concession for that, Verizon has agreed to extend the first term of the lease from 5 years to 10, which makes that first 10 years now much more secure than it was before, because we also added a penalty. So if they do cancel and remove their equipment within that first 10 years, they have to pay us 1 year's full. So we feel pretty confident that they'll be there at least 10 years. We feel pretty confident, frankly, that they'll be there for the entire 30 years that they're that this into. But in any case, we're very confident now that they'll be there for the first 10. Most of the other terms, such as the 2% escalator, are still the same. The total rent that the city would collect over the 30-year term, if Verizon extended for all the various terms, is virtually the same, but it will accumulate a little slower. If you're not aware, this antenna is near the beach and is in an area where the community severely lacks cell service. If you've been at the beach on a busy day, you know that it is very hard to do anything on your cell phone. And that also impacts our parking kiosks and makes them run slow on busy days as well, which causes a lot of frustration. So in the end, it's a valuable antenna to us, and so we're continuing to recommend action in the monthly rent.
Thank you, Director Vanderhyde. Vice Mayor St. Clair.
Thanks. I support this. I understand that it is a net decrease in financial assets that we will draw from it, but as Director Vanderhyde mentioned, the coverage in that area is abysmal on a good day. And it has been an increasing concern as the beach gets busier and busier that it's a safety issue, and people can't call 911 if necessary, and that's something that has been brought up again and again, like we need to have a way to communicate at the beach. So I understand that staff have worked very hard to negotiate this and then worked very hard to negotiate it again. And I still think it's a very good deal for us and for the community.
Thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. Commissioner Cochin?
Yes, I've got a few questions. I want to let you guys know that several people in my ward have specifically brought up this issue, and so I'm glad that this is something that's before us tonight, and I'd be proud to be able to vote on it. Before I vote on it, I wanted to get some clarification. So the space is currently not leased, is that correct?
That's correct. The city put up a tower at the water filtration plant in order to improve the communications between, for IT purposes, between the filtration plant and the other city buildings. It was done with the knowledge that that tower would also support cellular antennas. And we've been working with Merillat Communications to attempt to entice a cellular provider since that tower went up.
Okay. And then also to follow up, you had mentioned the kiosks. I know that was another point of contention that was brought up. Is there a possibility that we can get Verizon to do wired services to our kiosks?
I'm not sure that we could do that easily, although what we have secured, I guess, the knowledge from our kiosk provider that the cellular antenna card that is in those kiosks can be switched over to Verizon. So when this antenna goes up, those kiosks will, benefit from the full power of the Verizon network that now we're then out there. And they've assured us that in that case, they will operate much quicker. We also have the goal, this is more for proposal, but a goal to have the mobile app opportunity eventually for folks to park, simply taking a picture of their license plate and so forth rather than having to go to the kiosk. Heard that this antenna will not necessarily improve cell service for all users. It definitely will for Verizon and probably for some others, particularly the networks that piggyback on Verizon like Mint and some of these other, sort of third-party service providers. But if you're with AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile, this may not help, and so we want to get it in place and figure out if that app will be effective enough to roll it out. But in the meantime, the kiosks should work much better.
Okay, thank you. One follow-up question. So in regards to the negotiations, and Vice Mayor St. Clair brought this up, and I think this is something that's important to myself as well as my ward, safety out there, because I know that my phone doesn't work as soon as I turn that bend. So is there a possibility that we can get a wired phone somewhere on the beach for emergency situations?
We can definitely look into that. I think there are probably emergency kiosks, and things like that we could look into that might be able to be hardwired, that would be accessible to the public. So we'll look into that.
And since Verizon is decreasing the rent cost, do you think that we can get Verizon to cover that?
They're
We can ask.
We can ask.
Never hurts to ask.
Yeah, we can certainly ask. Verizon doesn't typically run, fiber service lines to individual homes and businesses necessarily. So I'm not sure if they have the infrastructure out there to do that, but we will definitely talk with them.
Thank you.
In that vein, because that has been brought up before, but the potential for call boxes there and perhaps elsewhere, like in Lakeshore Trail, for safety and security purposes. But in that vein, I love the way you think, Bill, in terms of asking Verizon to pay for that. But even if they don't have the infrastructure to perhaps connect that directly, perhaps we can at least ask them, like, hey, will you pay for this to be done? And we will put your branding on this, Verizon sponsored, emergency call box. Perhaps that's a way forward on that matter. But did I see Commissioner Kogo? Did you have a follow-up?
Yes. Are those colors specific? No, I'm just kidding. I have a question. Are there any other providers that we've tried to negotiate with, like the big boys, AT&T, T-Mobile, for tower service?
Yeah, so at this tower specifically, again, Merillat has been working with all of their contacts. The primary proprietor of Merillat used to work in the industry, and so has been reaching out to contacts and attempting to entice them for some time. We also definitely do work with those same cellular providers for antennas that they have on our water towers and in other areas of town. So we have relationships with them, and we continue to work on it.
Okay, gotcha. So then, as far as Verizon goes, because I understand the business negotiations aren't always easy. Like, we can ask them stuff and they'll just flat say no. And as far as Verizon goes, can you tell me the terms of this lease again? So if we do sign this lease, it is a 30-year lease with them?
It is technically a 10-year lease with 4 5-year extensions. And so as long as Verizon's happy and we are happy, those extensions automatically happen. But those extensions offer both parties the opportunity to get out at those 5-year increments. Our experience with our other antennas, once a cellular provider invests in the ground equipment in particular at that location, they've invested quite a bit and therefore less likely to pull out, right? It's an unlikely event unless something really changes. Their whole network changes or negotiations fail completely or something like that.
And then my last question is, from what they said, this will improve, at least for Verizon customers, or CDMA is their main, they're not a GSM carrier like the others, that will improve coverage on the beach for their users.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments over on this end of the dais, commissioners? Commissioner
Yes.
German.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I like the terms of the service and the agreement, Director Van der Hyde. And some concerns was brought up by about the kiosks. And looking at the renegotiation of the terms where we're going to be paying less, and the fact that we can opt out or they can as well. Have there been any, thoughts on if kiosk services provided, the Verizon services provided for the kiosks, would that kind of offset and kind of make up for the change of the terms for payments? Is that some way we can kind of negotiate that?
I could see that the kiosks being easier to use might increase beach parking revenue to a certain extent. So from that perspective, it's possible that would help. But I mean, keep in mind that although I've been kind of down in the dumps about this tonight, keep in mind that the $1.34 million or so that we're talking about is new revenue to the city.
Yeah.
And so, although it's less new revenue, we're getting sort of 2 bites at the apple, right? We're getting additional cell service out there at the beach, and we're getting money in the water fund.
Right. Looking at it holistically, the big picture. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. The more money we can get our water fund, the better. Especially when it's not coming from our water users. Mr. Manager, you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something I think related to Commissioner German's question. The kiosks. Word left my head. The kiosks. I think currently they're on T-Mobile. I believe.
I'm not sure which one they are. I know it's not Verizon.
Yeah, it's not Verizon. So the only thing that's associated with Verizon with the kiosks would be the actual cell card, just like you have in your cell phone. So to switch those out. So those are 2 separate contracts. But hopefully, as Director Van der Hyde pointed out, the ease of use will increase revenues. So
yeah. And that is a relief to hear, because that's new information. When this lease had come to us last fall, we were unsure if the kiosk provider was going to be able to utilize the Verizon network. So that's really reassuring and a relief to hear that we can indeed use the Verizon network for those kiosks, because that will make a dramatic improvement in its use. As the city manager knows from his own testing of it last year, because we heard feedback from various different users that there can be significant lags in use of that, almost to the point of is this even working? The kiosks seem to be broken because it takes so long sometimes, particularly peak cellular traffic time. But Commissioner or Vice Mayor St. Clair, follow?
I do. If we approve this tonight, what are we looking at for a timeline for the tower to be ready for business, or the antenna to be ready for business?
Yeah, they are very sure never to commit to a date.
I noticed that.
However, Verizon was very pleased to find out that we were able to get this approved at this meeting and not at the next one, which is just a matter of 2 weeks. And so that tells me that they're, interested in moving quickly.
Okay.
Our consultant still believes that cell service will be active yet for this summer season, unless something stands in the way.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, that was reassuring to me as well. Like, I didn't necessarily want to, reduce terms and have less money, but the fact that they were, pursuing the permitting, that they were like looking at more closely at the customer base who's going to serve, and like, wait a second, like, let's make some further changes, suggested to me that they're very serious about installing that antenna ASAP there. So I'm very happy to hear that or get that impression from this. And then very much interested, as you know, in being able to get that mobile app system set up for paid parking at Pure Marquette. Probably not going to be able to get that done this summer, but at least we're setting up the conditions so that we could get it in place next summer, summer 2025. Fingers crossed, hopefully. Also, just a caveat for everyone with regard to the safety. Even if you don't have Verizon, if you have cellular service and you're at the beach, you will still benefit from being able to call 911 if there's an emergency situation, because when you call 911, it jumps to any available cellular network. So even if you don't have Verizon, you will be able to utilize Verizon cellular service when calling 911 from the beach as well. So is there any other questions or comments at this time? Nope. All right. Well, thank you, Director Vanderhyde, and your team for working on this and shepherding this process and getting us improved cellular service as soon as possible at Pure Marquette and our West End neighbors over there. So thank you. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor St. Clair.
Yes.
Mayor Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kogo.
Yes.
Commissioner Keener.
Yes.
Commissioner German.
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman.
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we don't have any public hearings scheduled or unfinished business. Under new business, we do have City of Muskegon Code of Ethics, which we did touch on briefly last night. Changes were updated since that conversation. And this also had been at a Legislative Policy Committee meeting of the City Commission in November of last year. Or no, it was
a work session.
It was a work session in December. Yep. It had been an LPC meeting earlier in the year. But it was at a December work session that we last discussed this. So, so that we may begin deliberations, may I have a motion, please?
I move to readopt the City of Muskegon ethics policy as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Vice Mayor St. Clair, supported by Commissioner Keener, to readopt the updated City of Muskegon ethics policy as presented. Discussion. Commissioner or Vice Mayor St. Clair, anything to start us off with?
Only that I think that this is a good starting place. It's something that the commission, I understand, used to follow some years ago. Former Commissioner Emery asked that this be brought back to us, and they dug this out of the archives, and it's still pretty applicable. So I think that it's a good place for us to start from, and I anticipate that as years go by, we will update it and amend it to bring it a little more into the present. But I am in support of this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor St. Clair. Commissioner Keener, as a supporter of this motion, do you have anything to add or ask at this time?
No.
All right. Commissioner German.
Oh, yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm in total agreement with this as well. We have to have something in place to hold people accountable. I truly believe that, but as a human and respect for one another, these should be things that automatically, should be done by everybody. But also being an elected official, I think the community holds us to a higher standard. And we have to lead by example. And I think by putting something in place or revisiting this helps to let them know that we are looking to be held accountable and serve the community with the best integrity, and code of ethics, so we can be, I guess, a reflection to the city. So,
thank you, Commissioner German. Any other comments or questions at this time? Commissioner Kilgo.
I just have a comment that I agree with Commissioner German. Elected officials should be held by a higher standard, and I think a code of ethics is a great thing. All the way up to and should include the Supreme Court. All elected officials should have a code of ethics, and we did talk about last night because times are changing. It's 2024. There aren't certain policies that include some of the new technologies we use which us as a commission, we're going to look at adding in some policies for social media and other newer technologies that we'll continue to add into our lives every day.
And that will be forthcoming, whether at LPC meeting or a work session, that we'll get working on this social media policy. Any other questions or comments at this time? All right. Well, I am appreciative of staff moving this forward and finding that the policy that had previously been adopted, it was adopted in the first decade of this century, and then must have been put up on a shelf or something. Because when I joined the commission 10 years ago, this policy had not been shared or necessarily known. So what we've decided to do going forward is so that it is continuously known and followed and respected, is that it will be integrated into each commission's organizational meeting. So every new commission, this will be a part of organizational meeting for adoption, just to kind of reinforce it, bring it top of mind for existing and new commissioners, and this is also applicable to our appointed officials. In that regard, for appointed officials, Mr. Manager, could you perhaps speak to how you will, as our chief administrator, be ensuring that our appointed officials have the policy, understand the policy, and what your mechanisms, you anticipate your mechanisms to be, that's aware.
Yes.
Yeah, and following
So it'll be distributed out to division and department heads just to make them aware of this, as they're the ones that are the most impacted by this, and we'll make it available to all staff just so that they're aware of how this is. The fact that this has been adopted and this is an expectation within the city, but the individuals that it governs are the commission, and then essentially the senior staff and a number of appointed department heads. But I'm not anticipating any issues with this. This is, as Commissioner German noted, generally how we act anyways.
Yeah.
So I'm not really anticipating any issues here, but we'll make sure that it's communicated out in our next department head meeting later this month, and then our division senior staff meets every Wednesday morning. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any final thoughts, questions, comments at this time? All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Yes.
Commissioner Keener,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Gorman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, do you have anything to bring up under any other business?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have one more item for new business. This is the Lakeside Business Improvement District Board. We're looking to appoint the city manager or their designee to the Lakeside Business Improvement District Board. You do have the cover sheet that's put on the dais for you. And so if I would welcome a motion on that, and then the city manager can just report out on this for us.
I make a motion to approve the city manager sit as a representative for Lakeside Business Improvement District Board, or his designee.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Kilgo, supported by Vice Mayor St. Clair. Mr. Manager.
Yes. So the bid rule bylaws were a little fuzzy on this, so I just wanted to make sure that we were cleaning it up to make sure that I or the commission, in this case myself, could designate someone else to sit on the bid board for Lakeside. My schedule conflicts with their schedule a little bit, and that was causing some issues with quorum, so I wanted to appoint another staff member to that role who could support the Lakeside bid board in the way that they need to. I've already talked with City Treasurer Sarah Wilson back here, so she will be the one to be filling that role going forward, which I'm sure that the bid board will be appreciative of.
All right. Any questions or comments on this item? Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Gorman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cochin,
Yes.
Vice Mayor St. Clair,
Yes.
Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kilgo,
Yes.
Commissioner Keener,
Absent.
Commissioner German.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. Now for any other business. Is there anything that commissioners wish to bring up right now? Okay. If there's nothing, then I open up to Oh, okay. I thought your hand went up for a second. Then I move on to public comment on any topics. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to give public comment? Yes, sir. We have Mr. Gerwitz joining us from the Sheldon Park neighborhood.
Yep.
Welcome, sir. You have up to 3 minutes to provide your remarks.
Thanks. First of all, I wanted to say thank you and Commissioner Kilgo for coming out to our little neighborhood association meeting and giving me the opportunity to bend your ear for a little bit. So thank you. Same with Commissioner St. Clair at an earlier meeting. So thank you guys for that. I just bought a house in the city. And I came down, it worked out that the closing site and myself and the seller could meet on Friday to close on that. We closed, we did the work. Hey, it's a nice day. I'll walk down to City Hall and get the water put into my name. City Hall is closed on Friday. That has led to a cascading effect of negative things for me happening this week, not the least of which is the seller still is responsible for the water in the city there. This happens more than you might know, that people actually have to do business with the city on Fridays. My ask of you is to reorganize and reschedule City Hall so you're open on Fridays. Even if it's just a half a day, some people can only get their work done through this, through the city on Fridays. And when you guys are not open on these days, it puts a tremendous hardship on the public and the private sector. That's what I'm asking for. Please open up City Hall on Fridays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gerwitz. Appreciate you joining us this evening and sharing that input. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to give public comment at this time? Seeing none. And unfortunately, we cannot accept public comment by phone right this moment due to technical difficulties, hiccups, problems. But we hope to, and confident that we'll have that restored for our next commission meeting, so we can accept public comment at that time by phone. So, I don't see anyone in the audience for public comment. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Support.
All right, and we got a motion by Commissioner German, supported by everybody at this side of the dais. We'll give it to Commissioner Kilgo. To adjourn, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you. Take care. Be well.
Night, everyone.